Our next presenter, Eric Stark. Eric began teaching at the University of Maine in 2005 and received tenure in 2010. I think we can all thank Eric as being a big part of the movement to get a Bachelor of Architecture program at UMA, and I know he'll be speaking about that this evening. Besides his academic pursuits, Eric also has a practice in Portland doing residential and institutional work. And Eric lives in Portland with his wife and 2 children, and he's been described as the first dad at the beach to get in the water and the first one to dig a hole in the sand.
Fair enough. Do I ring that?
You ring it when you're ready.
Oh, when I'm ready. Okay. All right. Okay. There we go. Over the last 6 years, the University of Maine at Augusta Architecture program has engaged in 30 different community-based design projects. That is built upon our 25-year history as an architecture program. As Paul mentioned, starting next fall, we will become the first and only professional degree program in the state of Maine, and the only public undergraduate degree north of New York City. We take this responsibility very seriously, and we're very excited for it. That program is built upon 3 ideas: community, collaboration, and design. Community is the one that I will talk about this evening, but the idea of community in its very nature involves collaboration. If you add architecture to it, we would argue you get design. What do our students gain from this work? Our students get to sit across the table from real people with real problems, issues that they're faced with, that they're looking for solutions. These issues range from master planning from Lewiston, Maine, to the design of a greenhouse for our own campus. The scales are infinite. The possibilities are too. This kind of work fits perfectly with our student body because we are a commuter campus. As such, our students live and work in their communities. And in that way, giving back to their communities is somewhat second nature. Out of these 3 columns, these 3 ideas, community, collaboration, and design, comes our mission. We engage community. All this work that you see this evening is based upon a very simple idea, and that is the idea of creating understanding. We tell our students very specifically, you cannot get a client to like what you do. It's a losing battle. The idea, the very concept of like is simply too small a target to aim for. Therefore, we talk instead in terms of understanding. That understanding is created in a number of ways through a number of media. Specifically, we talk a lot about the use of the diagram. The diagram is a way of taking ideas and reducing them to their very essence. And in that way, we build understanding. Once that understanding is built, consensus can be reached. And once consensus is reached, you might very well get to like. What does the community then gain from the work that the students do? Perhaps the most important thing the communities gain is the very idea of possibilities. Oftentimes, communities or municipalities, nonprofits, are faced with a lack of funds, a lack of staff, and perhaps the one thing they do have is some vision, but not the same vision that our students have. Because our students aren't encumbered with those same financial constraints. We try very hard to unencumber them from preconceptions, and in that way, they come to a problem completely new, completely fresh, and completely full of enthusiasm. All of this work only works because of our students. The project you see here, which is our most recent, is the design for a greenhouse on UMA's campus. This project, when built, although we're raising money for it now, will extend the great work the UMA Community Garden already does, producing over 1,200 pounds of food last year that went to local food banks. That kind of effect that design can have is something all of our students are part of and will leave as part of their education, seeing the very real possibilities that design, and specifically in our case architecture, can have on individuals and on communities and indeed on lives. Some of those possibilities include war memorials for the town of Clinton, Maine, pulling together right now disparate, different memorials across town into a central place that will become a home for celebration of lives lost. This project resulted in actual money being put aside for that war memorial. The possibilities also include new sanctuaries, worship spaces, in this case for the Temple Bethel in Augusta, currently in an old house, that with the possibility of this project could not only increase the sacred, but also the potential for education. Other projects include libraries, in this case for the town of Richmond. Finally, I'd like to speak to one specific community partner, the Bread of Life Ministries in Augusta. In the fall of 2009, we met with the Bread of Life Ministries for the first time. The month before we met them, 64 children had been turned away from their homeless shelter. 64 children. They have a soup kitchen, they have a homeless shelter, and they have 80 units of transition housing. Since that first meeting, our students have worked with this group to redesign their soup kitchen as an art gallery, thereby bringing in a completely different constituency into that space and really reimagining what a soup kitchen can be. They turned an old house into a new day skills center and VA housing, the only specific VA housing in Mid-Coast, Maine. And they recently did a garage conversion that turned it into a daycare and meeting space. That's currently under construction. And those images you see here. The final piece you'll see was something of a challenge for the students. It involved a vice that they weren't sure they should be designing for. And that was smoking. This is actually a smoking bench designed for some of the homeless people at the homeless shelter. They weren't allowed by law to smoke within a certain distance of the building, and the students designed this. It is yet unbuilt, and so our community work across Maine continues. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Eric. You know, I've had the pleasure of seeing Eric in action with his students, and I have to say, he inspires them and just gets them out there doing things. It's really awesome.